Hello, friends, enemies, acquaintances, and strangers. Um, this is my response to the Walrus's recent article on Jordan Peterson, and let's bring this up actually, because censorship laws don't allow for individuals to share news articles on Facebook or other social media platforms. And the internet censorship bill is one of the reasons why I did not vote liberal, and I will continue not to vote liberal, because also of the hate speech laws, quite frankly, and also the Suicide Prevention Act that was instated, because these are double-edged swords, right? And highlighting, or at least riding on the coattails of what's happening in LA with this resistance to deportation of individuals of questionable origin, and the leftist, or the more communalistic, or those who are more egalitarian, I would say, that are, of course, going gangbusters for all of this. They froth at the mouth every time something like this. They pretty much live for the controversy and for the opportunity to toot their own horns and inflate their own egos. And of course, how am I any different, right? I'm just another random dude wearing communist era Czech Republic tunics. So, whatever. I should just go fuck myself in the corner. Let's bring this up. This is the Walrus. Let's go. There it is. Is Jordan Peterson making it up as he goes? The Culture War's favorite prophet can't finish a straight thought. By Luke Savage. And he says that he basically bring himself to right the man's cancer metastasized, where in the sentence, the man fell prey to the tendency of the dread condition to metastasize is readily available. He's a master of faux Confucian aphorisms and so on and so forth. And again, this is just to let people know who actually do watch this stuff that I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible, and I'm not trying to become sort of some sort of talking head, contrarian or grifter. I'm just interested in communicating and exposing the propaganda machine for what it is, that destroys the truth and obliterates the historical narrative, because I want accuracy. I want accuracy. I want 100% accuracy, like 3 miles down the range. Because if you miss the target, that's the difference between, in a lot of cases, life and death. It really is. You might not think that a point of information is as sharp as the tip of a spear, but it is. It really is. So he's going after Peterson. Let's see, and he's saying that he can basically that he basically he's pretentious, and that he infantilizes, or makes people into children when he talks to them, uh, because people are childish, and people are not childish. How dare you say we're childish? But the thing is that creativity is childlike. So this tendency to want to protect this insulated, um, anxiety-ridden, paranoid, and fearful, quite frankly, insecure uh, identity paradox. Let's call it like that, because it is a paradox. that you have logic, and then you have creativity, and as if these are diametrically opposed to each other. It's a false dichotomy. The incredible thing about Peterson is that in writing and speech, he somehow manages to be both sentient, reactionary, and a purveyor of postmodern gobbledygook. Again, this is out of order, and I'm saying this as a critique and also as a response. In that I like this part. It's one thing that he made him attractive to some people, especially some young men, as a public figure. It's the idea that there's a fundamentally deeper order at work beneath the disorienting tumults of 20th and 21st century life, that social roles and the relations that arise from them are ultimately rooted in nature. That reality, wherever the Marxist university professors, godless postmodernists, and intersectional Tumblr teens might insist that to the contrary, rest on foundations that are fixed and immutable. The left, Peterson says, may dislike inequality and hierarchy, but they're right there in the animal kingdom. Just look at how the humble lobster has lived since time immemorial. But that statement is true. There are some non-negotiable things that we have to deal with in life. They're non-negotiable. The birth and death. So mortality. Mortality is non-negotiable. And the left keeps in its pursuit of greatness, right? As if we're gonna chop this up and dice it down to smaller pieces for to be digested, more easily digested. Is that the left is continuously seeking immortality, and is continuously seeking what am I going to call it? A pathos of elitism, so as to differentiate themselves from the rest of society, because creativity is a threat display, as I've said in history propaganda, but it's also a signifier of intelligence. And to a lot of these academics, that's all they have, right? All they have is their writings. All they have is their linguistic gymnastics. They spent their entire lives, again, in the ivory tower or within education. But as soon as they step outside of that education, they make themselves like complete buffoons. Especially when they start stepping into the foray of politics or of cultural critiques. So, and he's talking about he's criticizing Peterson for using a multitude of meanings, in that a single statement, one word, and its definitions or its synonyms have different interpretations and extrapolations of meaning, right? But that is the crisis: is what does it mean? What is it made of, right? Again, I think about, was it Hamlet? He goes and digs up the clown from his childhood. He holds his skull, right? Everybody knows that one, right? To be or not to be. But in this effort to continuously redefine society that is more beneficial for all participants, but there is a threshold, right? There's a cutoff line, and you only get one chance in this cycle, right? And every human being has a life expectancy of on average about 80 years, but for men it's even less. And that's a duality of statement considering the month of June. So when I talk about this kind of psychology, or this archetype, or this mentality, this what do I want to call it? This trope, even of a character and a construct, right? Because these people that come from this postmodern, and actually we should stop using postmodern. We should start using post-internet epoch, or post AI, right? So like be as a historical value, like before AI and after AI. Because AI is, as much as I hate to admit it, is one of the most significant and important uh, inventions that humanity has ever created. It is non-negotiable, because if you don't adopt the technology, those who do will wipe you out, and they'll make choices for you by your negligence, or by your ignorance, or um, by your neglect of such things. Oh, I don't want to get involved. Your complacency, rather. I acquiesce to a lower, not necessarily a lower. I acquiesce to a minor degree of living underneath the majorum, right? Not majorum. Oh, that was a bit of a slip. Majorum, minorum, majorum. So this is like cultural hipsterism, or it's beyond first adoption. It's, oh, I have to, in order to remain relevant, I have to keep ahead of these trends. I have to I have to be, again, this mentality of intellectual creativity. I have to be ahead of everything, and so then I'll invent these mental gymnastics in order to keep other people behind me and following in my footsteps, and always continuously catching up to what I have to say. So therefore, I inflate my personal importance within a certain discipline, or whatever there else. And there's no one more guilty of this than philosophers. It's really not that hard to figure out. Why does Peterson do this? As I said, because he's taking on the bull by its horns, right? He's taking on the centaur in the maze, right? Because this is the social construct as defined and as communicated by Jeremy Bentham, right? That the Leviathan, the biblical monster, is something that every generation has to combat, right? And the Leviathan is entropy. The biggest monster of all our existence is entropy, in that which everything has a tendency to self-destruct or return back to its base form or its base elements within this physical realm, right? Again, there's just some things in life that are non-negotiable. That's it. But the left hates this, right? The left hates this. They want all this blame, or all of this laden language that burdens and displaces any kind of emotional weight and gravitas off to the side. So they can continue to live in this sandbox without, again, I would say it's like a metaphysical, or a simian, right? A simulation of reality. But if all reality is a simulation, then it is a meta simulation. So nothing I do has any consequence whatsoever. And it's because of other people that I have problems. And so in order for him to, again, this is simple, first year introduction to philosophy stuff, in that, don't argue with fools lest you become one yourself. But the fools that make a living off of this propagation of the propaganda, the negative propaganda, they mask it as this positive propaganda, but it is entirely negative, and its influence is nefarious. And while we have personal responsibilities, there is, again, larger social obligations. No, I don't want to have to do that. No, I don't want to have to do that. No, that interferes with this protective shell that I've and these earmuffs and this bunker that I've placed myself in, so that I cannot be reached, or my outer shell cannot be penetrated. That's my response to this article. And of course, because again, it's the media, right? It's the media that we thought. I've read this again. If you're not reading, you're not leading. Um, I read this in prison. It was in National Geographic, or it was in Maclean's, one of the two, Scientific American, maybe one of the three, whatever. In that, they were talking about the Spanish American War, and that Pulitzer was a publisher, he was a newspaperman, and he was rattling the saber, right, for the American people against the Spaniards, and it was basically a false, no, a false flag. What started the Spanish American War? Uh, so 1898, between the United States and Spain, primarily stemming from Cuba's struggle for independence. So having to do with jingoism and the expansion of the Americas, in order for the Americas to concretely define their borders. So, and also their sphere of influence further into into like the Gulf of America or Gulf of Mexico, and into the South Pacific. So let's see. Okay, fall of 1897, a new Spanish ministry offered concessions to the insurgents. It will recall General Weyler abandoned his reconcentration policy and allowed Cuba an elected Cortes with limited powers of self-government. These concessions came too late. The insurgent leaders would now settle for nothing short of complete independence. The war went on in Cuba, and a series of incidents brought the United States to the brink of intervention. Riots in Havana in December led to the sending of the battleship Maine to the city's port as a precautionary for the safety of U.S. citizens and property. So that indicates that the United States had people, had its citizens, and had its influence in Cuba before the turn of the last century. So this is what people don't know, and that's what they don't understand. What they just want to they want to put their nose and put their foot in not their foot. They want to throw their stake into the argument, and opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one, but the truth is that some people are more educated, and their opinions are objectively better, and an evaluation have more influence and weight. That's why we have an education system in the first place. That's why a PhD is of importance. So I don't think you need to read the entire thing, but I hope you do, because that's what my professors would have said to me in university. Do the reading. Do the reading so that you understand, and so that you can fight off the Leviathan of humanity, because it doesn't stop. It won't ever stop. Thanks for listening. I'll put this in history propaganda. They'll probably call it Peterson and the Spanish American War.